We've got a bit of sad/happy news today.
Bye, everyone.
And gelato. Gelato's so good.
It's ingrained into us to just moan about anything.
So we're going to do a podcast today on mental health.
Yeah, I thought we'd end on a high. Last episode, let's cry.
I feel like we've just scratched the surface here, okay?
Yeah.
So if it's okay with you, I'd like to dive into it a little bit deeper.
We can try. This is unrehearsed, so
Which I haven't told you I was going to do. But have you ever hit a breaking point? And if so, what did you do to get beyond it?
I won't go into what my breaking point was because it was arguably one of the darkest parts of my life, and I'm very, very glad I got through it the way I did.
No one's perfect. I've made a lot of mistakes, especially this year. I've made so many mistakes.
That is ultimately how I've learned to cope, deal, and move past how I used to feel to the person I am now.
100%. 100%. Wow, that was
You made me cry on our last podcast.
Great. All right, welcome to episode 7 of the Lean Life podcast featuring myself, and we've got our usual guest,
Nick. Hello.
Woohoo! So we've got a bit of sad/happy news today. So we've been doing this now since December time?
Yeah.
Well, 7 months if it's episode 7 months, 7 months, okay. So we are going to bring season 1 to a close. So this is going to be the last podcast with me and Nick together.
Bye, everyone.
For now, okay. Not forever, just for now. Which is sad times, isn't it? But how fast has it gone?
It's flown by. It's been emotional.
Absolutely flown by. But we will have one last podcast next month with Laura. So going through like a really cool client story. And then you'd have to wait for season 2, which will be late 24/25.
Oh my
We're in
God.
2024, aren't we? Not 2023.
Yeah. Wow.
But how's your week been so far, Nick?
Yeah, it's been mental. It's been warm. I've been attached to every bit of clothing I've worn. Yeah, I keep moaning. I'm like, I really want it to be summer. And then summer comes around and I'm like, where's the snow?
I think it's just a British person thing, isn't it?
It is. It's ingrained into us to just moan about anything. Yeah, it's been all right. How about your week?
Yeah, it's good. So I've just come back from Sicily.
You did?
Which was amazing. I
Jammy
ate
bastard.
pizza, pasta, and limoncello spritz. Who would have thought limoncello spritz would be so good?
It sounds good.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And contrary to what people think and what my clients think and people generally, I eat like a normal person. When I go on holiday, yes, of course I eat more shit. And it's great, and I don't feel guilty about it because there's no need.
No.
You've got to enjoy life.
Yeah.
And gelato. Gelato's so good.
It's reminiscing.
But look, we'll go into like the main event, if you like. The main event. Do you know what? I don't know what I'm talking about today. I need more coffee. So we're going to do a podcast today on mental health, which is so different to what we would normally do.
Yeah, I thought we'd end on a high. Last episode, let's cry.
But we're going to make it, look, we're not going to make it just sad and depressing. We're just going to open up on some stories. But also, the reason we're going into it is that, like, especially with like hitting your goals and mental health, they're so closely intertwined. Fitness and mental health are so closely intertwined.
Yeah, definitely.
And especially like with a lot of our clients, a lot of them come to us, on the verge of a mental health issue or mental health breakdown because of how they look and feel about themselves.
Yeah, they definitely go hand in hand. I think you often find people at their lowest is when they often come to a coach for help. Normally it's physically at their lowest, but also mentally that has a knock-on effect. So it's nice to see not just their physique change, but it's nice to see their kind of mental health take a bit of a turn as well.
Absolutely. But also I think people forget that we are also just normal human beings.
Yep, and just a dude.
Yeah, so obviously when people work in fitness, generally they tend to be in good shape. So it's quite easy to forget the fact that we are normal people that do normal things, that still have pizza, still have chocolate, and still go on absolute benders.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of the time, I'm not going to say me because I'm just a normal person, but a lot of people in the fitness industry get put on this pedestal where they're almost appear like godlike or meta-human, and then it's like, I mean, they bleed too. We're all just the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. So let's kick it off this way as well. So, I mean, I don't necessarily suffer from mental health issues at present, but I know in the past, Nick, you have.
Yeah, I think everybody goes through different phases and different kind of. I think life plays different cards and stuff like that. For me, there's been periods of times where I probably had mental health issues, or at least I was dealing with mental health problems, and I didn't realise what they were at the time. I'm not going to say it's a new thing for society, but I think it's widely more accepted than it would have been years ago. Even probably when I was in like senior school and stuff, I remember kind of thinking, I don't feel great right now, or oh, I don't feel anything right now.
Yeah.
And I think back then it wasn't really known or spoken about. So you kind of just dealt with it, and it wasn't. I don't think I really realised what things like depression and anxiety and those type of things were until like I think a couple of like potentially my final year of uni, and I started to kind of hear more about it and stuff, and then you start to kind of recognise kind of like those kind of things and what the symptom, not the symptoms, but what they are, and you're kind of like, oh, I've got that. Oh, I'm feeling like that, and then it's not self-diagnosis, but I think you almost kind of start to convince yourself that you've got it going on and stuff. And then it wasn't until I went and kind of spoke to a GP and was like, this is how I'm feeling. And then they kind of looked into it a little bit more. And then, yeah, hey presto, there was some kind of mental health issues going on there. Nothing that couldn't be dealt with, and nothing that I think for me, it was more the exploration of it, understanding where it came from and why I felt that way. And I think even now I'm in a much better place, and I'm a much more capable of understanding the cues, so I don't take that dip again. But I think for a lot of people, it's understanding what it is, what's triggering it, what's caused it. And yeah, that's kind of it. It's an interesting one though, because I could probably sit here and say that I've probably felt the way that I felt, not all my life, but I can remember feeling the way that I felt more than I felt like okay, if that makes sense. So there's definitely a longer period of time where I felt the absence of feeling something than when I felt something. I'm wording this terribly. I didn't rehearse this at all. But yeah, I think it's an interesting one as well, because it affects people in different ways. Like for me, it's always been the absence of emotion. Like I feel very monotone, but then also the flip side to that is when I feel an emotion, I feel it very, very strongly. So like I cry at films if it gets me. Otherwise, I can watch a film completely deadpan and feel nothing. Or if I feel an emotion, then I cry.
Yeah.
Or I get really excitable, and then that kind of gets a little bit, not out of control, but like, yeah, if I feel it, I feel it massively. And if I don't feel it, then it's just deadpan, feel nothing. And yeah, it's an interesting one though, because it's not necessarily the same for other people.
No, so does everyone have different triggers and different?
Yeah, so I think in my experience, and based on my very limited knowledge of mental health, you get people that have it just because they have it. It could be sometimes it can kind of be a family thing that gets passed down, or you can just develop it over time. And sometimes there's traumas and triggers that start to kind of occur, which create it and stuff. The way I like to see it, particularly with depression, is you've got a factory up in your head of all these little workers producing the good old serotonin, and they go on strike, and then your brain has no serotonin, and so yeah, it's basically just your workers are on strike. So it's an interesting one, because that's what I find fascinating about it is with kind of physical health and everything. If you break a bone, there's an obvious fix to it, and it's obvious where it is. It's on your arm's flapping about because it's snapped. Whereas with mental health, it's quite difficult because it's not as visible, if that makes sense. And it's also not, what works for me doesn't work for other people. It took me a long time to kind of understand and establish how I was feeling and things like that. And then once I figured it out, like, you just know what works for you in terms of how to not work around it, but deal with it, cope with it. And I think you in a way, you've almost got to challenge yourself and face your demons, or at least in my case, I had to, for me to be able to mature and move past it all and everything. But yeah, it's an interesting one.
Of course. So I feel like we've just scratched the surface here, okay?
Yeah.
So if it's okay with you, I'd like to dive into it a little bit deeper.
We can try. This is unrehearsed, so
Well, I haven't told you I was going to do, but it was always going to be my plan. I just didn't tell you.
Yeah.
So you've said it's something now you're aware of it. So if you don't mind telling us, what exactly is it that you're aware of now? Like, in terms of like your mental health struggles, what exactly is it you either do or have struggled with?
So as a kid, and even to an extent now, I feel like I'm often a bit of like the black sheep of the group. I always find I've never found it easy to, I've got good friends, and I've got good groups of friends, but I've never found it easy to kind of fit in or settle into a group. Like, I often find and see, I'm almost a bit envious of some people that have had like friends since school and they're all groups and stuff like that. Like, I've got friends since school, but my friendship groups are all scattered, and I find it very difficult to feel like I fit in anywhere. And it's probably just a little bit of like me just being the lovable rogue that I am. I'm not really, but like in the sense that like I struggle to settle down. I think there's a level of abandonment issues there, in the sense that like I've had groups of friends before, and then they've like for whatever reason ditched me, or just kind of the contact stopped. So I think I very much struggle with that side of things, previous relationships and stuff like that. During school as well, I mean, I'm a proud member of the nerd community, and I'll always be a proud member of that. But, you know, back then in school, being a bit of a loner, and then you find yourself just becoming a target.
Okay.
And I was quite proud, not proud of being a nerd, but I didn't hide it. And I think when I went to high school, one of my first memories was it was our first break time at high school. And I had basically gone from junior school where everybody all mingles together and we all played like Bulldog and stuff like that. And I remember going up to these group of people that I would always play with in junior school. And I tried to start a game of Bulldog, and they just turned around and said, "No, we don't do that anymore." I was like, "What do you mean we don't do that anymore?" They're like, "Oh no, we stand around and chat." And they obviously suddenly became like members of a very cool group of people and stuff. And I just couldn't get my head around it. I couldn't get my head around the idea of break time not being playtime anymore and stuff like that. And I think, you know, that quickly kind of set me aside. And then, just because you're on your own, you just become a bit of a target. And then it got worse because I had no real backup or support. So you start to accept it, and then you stop going out so much at break time because you're getting your ass handed to you from time to time. So you then hide, and you basically hide in either a classroom or a library or something like that. So that's probably where not all of it stems from, but that's probably where some of it would stem from is the feeling of isolation, in the sense, as I said, I had friends and I'm very grateful for them, and I've still got a lot of them now, but I still don't have like a big group that I would feel like I fit into. And I always feel like, and I guess it's more of a me problem now, but I always feel like anytime I am with a group of people, I feel like the odd one out. And it might just be me thinking that, and that's not actually the case. But I think for such a long period of time, having people just kind of ditch me or it not work out and stuff like that, I think that level of not wanting, but having to be a bit of a loner and having to kind of just deal with things on your own means that I'm always going to feel a little bit alone, even when I'm in a room full of people. But, you know, as I said, I recognise that, and I understand that, and I understand in many ways, because of how I felt then, I've developed that whole I will have to do it on my own type of mindset. So even now, I understand that I'm not alone. I understand that my brain just thinks it has to deal with it alone, which is how I'm coping with it, because it's now like, talk more to people, reach out. You know, I used to mope saying, "Oh, I've got nobody," when in the reality is I have loads of people. I just don't have one big group.
Yeah.
So now I just, you know, latch on and reach out if I need to. And that's that. But also I like being alone as well, because I've done it for so long. So I like my me time too. So, yeah, it's just juggling all of that. But I think that's where, for me, it stems. There's a lot of it stems from like childhood, and there's other bits, obviously, I won't go into. But, you know, the definitive moments for me, I think, was kind of in my school era and stuff. And I think it's where, you know, kids all go from hanging out and being together, and then everybody starts to develop their own personalities and stuff like that. And I never felt the necessity or the need to fit in school. So I would always still paint my Warhammer. I would always still read Lord of the Rings. I would always still, you know, like, I think it's not even shamefully, but I think even up to like age of 15, maybe even 16, I still went out into my parents' garden playing with swords and stuff.
Yeah.
Because that's what I liked doing. And even now I see swords and lose my shit, because I just like knights and everything. Yeah. But back then it was no longer, obviously it wasn't deemed cool, and it was a bit weird and stuff like that. And I get it was, but it was what I was into, and it's what I still am into. But I think back then I never apologized for it because I'd never felt the necessity to. But because I was on my own and I was the weird kid, then you just kind of, you become a target. Become a target for other people's insecurities. Because the irony now is like, I liked superheroes when I was younger and got bullied for it. And now it's like the biggest grossing film franchise ever. And everyone's like, oh my God, I love the Avengers. And I was like, liked them before they were cool. But
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly.
So yeah, it is what it is. But I think a lot of my, not a lot of them, but most of the things that I kind of deem as issues probably stem from being younger. And I think that happens for a lot of people as well. I think in our kind of childhood era and in our teenage years and stuff, obviously our brain's still taking in information, it's still adapting, and you're becoming the person that you will ultimately be. And so a lot of the things we experience when we're younger and stuff like that have a knock-on effect. And I think, you know, that situation of being, you know, that situation of socializing and still feeling alone, even in a group of people and stuff, I still have to this day. And while it's only one very, very minor thing of the things I've experienced in life, it ultimately is probably the reason I do struggle socially still, in the sense that, like, I do have trust issues, I do have abandonment issues, I do have it in the back of my head that everybody's just going to leave me one day. And I don't necessarily believe those anymore, but that means that, you know, ultimately I go in with my guard up. I have a very limited social battery. And I do obviously need my me time and stuff, but also I kind of need people. It's a weird one. You like, I don't need anyone, but I do need people. It's an interesting one, but it all stems from that very, very kind of minor thing. But I just let it balloon over time because, again, at the time, you don't understand kind of what the knock-on effect would be. And so the fact that I just kind of, I guess, my parents were fantastic. I love my parents to pieces. They've always had my back. But my home life was fantastic, but my life outside of home wasn't. And so the fact that I probably just felt low and unloved and unwanted has kind of brought me to the point now where, you know, I probably lack the feeling of emotion and stuff like that from time to time because I was kind of a bit exempt from it when I was younger. So my brain's just adapted to feel, you know, when somebody shows an emotion or when I feel an emotion, I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. And my, you know, the factory goes fucking nuts in my head. But, you know, on a day-to-day basis, I am just kind of very blasé and monotone about things. So, because it's just how my brain's coped and dealt with it rather than, it's one of those things where if you don't laugh, you'll cry. So I think my brain was like, well, if we do neither, we'll be all right. So it did neither.
Yeah, I get you. And like, so for a lot of people, like they hit like a breaking point, right, of their mental health struggles.
Yeah.
Have you ever hit a breaking point? And if so,
God,
what
yeah.
did you do to get beyond it?
I won't go into what my breaking point was because it was arguably one of the darkest parts of my life. And I'm very, very glad I got through it the way I did. Because if I didn't, then we might, you know, not be having this conversation. But I think everybody hits breaking point. I can't exactly tell you, or I don't exactly know what my breaking point was, but I think for a lot of people, it could be something so minute. So I'm not going to go into my actual breaking point, but I will use an example of when I was working quite hard and I had a lot going on and a lot of stresses and stuff like that. I didn't feel like I was at breaking point, but I remember my eggs stuck to the pan one morning. Okay. And I wasn't going to have a fried egg. And it instead, I couldn't scoop it off and it just stuck to the pan. And I just remember losing my shit. Like I just went, fuck, I didn't go ape shit. I didn't break anything. And I didn't like, I just remember just yelling at the eggs. It's uncontrollably. Yeah. Like I was outraged that the eggs would stick to this pan. And it's, you know, looking back at it, like I just kind of, rather than have a fried egg, I had scrambled and a little bit of it stuck to the pan. Oh no, a bit of fairy liquid, job done. But because I was dealing with so much, the smallest thing just switched. And I think that's where people often find their breaking point is there's no massive major event. I think it's just little things over time start to build up and we don't let anything out. I mean, one of my biggest failings, which I'm a lot better at doing now, mainly because I have to be for the job role that I'm in and stuff. And also as a coach, I think you have a responsibility to kind of preach what you teach. But I never used to, and to a degree, I still keep my guard up, but I never used to talk about how I felt, which meant I never had any outlet.
Yeah.
which then ultimately meant that everything I was feeling internally, I was struggling with internally. And on the outside, people are like, how's it going? And I'm like, I'm fine. And on the inside, it's like, I'm dying,
Yeah.
send help. But yeah, so I think, again, because I let it all fester inside me, every now and then these bursts of emotion would come out because my body can't store it anymore. So there'd be bursts of like rage, there'd be bursts of sadness, there'd be bursts of happiness too. But as I said, that's where, for me, there's this absence of emotion. But when I feel something, I don't know how to deal with it. So then my brain just kind of explodes and feels it. So like love, I feel intensely. Anger, I'll feel intensely. Happiness, I feel intensely. But on an average day-to-day basis, I feel nothing, which isn't a bad thing. I'd like to point out that's not a bad thing because, again, I've felt like that for as long as I can remember. So for me, that's normal. But if you are feeling absent and you're worried about it, talk to a GP, because I didn't for a very long time, and that's why we're here where we are now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's an interesting one. But yeah, the breaking point for me was just it's very small things. And I think a lot of people find that it's just, it builds up over time. There's no real outlet of emotion, or there's no real outlet to talk about how you're feeling or understand why you're feeling that way. And so your body's response to the most mild inconvenience is just let it all out. And for me, those poor eggs got it.
I can actually relate to that as well because, so I said I never struggled with mental health, like that I was even aware of until literally a second. So when I left the place that we used to work at, which I'm not going to name, but if you put two and two together, you know where it is.
Yep.
I remember the weekend before having decided. So at that moment, I was like, I've decided now, basically,
Yeah.
because I was taking the bins down. Lucy had bought me a really nice, like Puma, bluish, sort of greyish top, and I loved it. It was great. And we've got like a lethal door in our flat where essentially if you catch any thread of clothing, it's going to rip your whole shirt.
Yeah.
So I was taking the bins down. I was already annoyed because I was cleaning. I was in quite bad mood. I'd just finished working the 6th day in a row and I was knackered.
Yeah.
And I was already like stressed about finances. You know, I think that day a client had left and it was impossible to get a new client at that place. It was just really hard. So I was like, oh, how am I going to pay bills? And then I ripped. So obviously I caught my sleeve on the door and I just lost my shit. I just threw the bins on the floor. I was like, poor Lucy. I was screaming, not at Lucy in general, just she was in this person. So I was like, fuck's sake. So what's wrong? And I just lost my shit. And I'd never done that before, ever.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you why I lost my shit. And then I decided I wasn't happy in my work. And then I was like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, I think it's because, you know, I loved my time at that place, but I also worked myself to the bone.
Yeah.
Which wasn't a bad thing. But again, you've got to think about all the stresses you were probably dealing with at the time. The fact that, you know, I think, I'm not going to play the gender card, but we as guys don't necessarily have the same kind of sit down and talk about our feelings as girls might. I think, I want to say modern day role models, most modern day male role models are quite toxic, in my opinion. Like you get your Andrew Tates, which are just absolutely awful.
Idiots, yeah.
Whereas like, you know, I think there are some positive forms of masculinity, but I think for me, the ability to kind of open up and speak to each other and stuff is probably something that needs to be done. And I think we're better at it now, but I don't think we necessarily did it. Like I certainly didn't talk about how I was feeling at that place where I worked.
Yeah, of course. No.
I did with the managers. The managers knew how I felt, but in terms of like on a day-to-day basis, in terms of talking to like you guys on the gym floor and stuff, you wouldn't. And I think that's the same in my social circle, and also being a little bit of like a recluse as well. I don't have anybody to let that out to. And so for you as well, if you've never opened up about how you're feeling, and you've had a particularly rough month or so, your body just needs to let it out, and it will do. Whether it's catching a thread on your jumper or your egg sticking to a pan, it could be the most minor inconvenience, but it is the final straw. You know, I think an analogy that I've had used at my job and stuff at the moment is you've got to think you're a bottle, and everything is drip feeding into that bottle. And unless you kind of empty that bottle from time to time, eventually it's going to get to the neck and then it's going to fill over and it's going to spill out. And then before you know it, all hell's breaking loose. And I think it's one of those things where you've got to kind of keep emptying your cup to kind of keep filling it, if that makes sense. But it's one of those things that I don't think people do very well, because almost like the show of emotion is deemed wrong at the moment for some reason.
And why is that? Why is it?
As in for guys or people in
Just
general?
people in general.
People in general, I don't know. I think it's a level of people don't want to feel like they're weak. I've never felt like I wanted to feel weak because I've never, it's really cliche, but I've never felt weak because I've never felt strong. So, you know, for me, I don't feel like showing a weakness is a problem because I've never seen myself as a strong person anyway. And also, I think it's you don't want to burden people with your tales of woe. I'm a big fit believer in, and I still feel this now, you know, the things that I've experienced in life and the things that I feel and the things that I deal with, while from my perspective, some have been awful and some less so, I always think there is sadly somebody far worse off than me.
Yeah.
And so I often feel like me burdening people with my problems, prevents me being able to help people, because I've always wanted to be the person that helps somebody, because I've always tried to be the kind of person that I probably needed when I was younger. And that's just somebody that you can turn to, that you can talk to, but also like that protector, that healer. That's the role that I always try to play as best as I can. But in order to do that, I don't want to then burden people with my problems, because everyone's got things going on. You know, you'd be very ignorant and very selfish to think that the world revolves around you. And I think you'd also be very selfish to think, well, you've not got anything going on, so here are all my problems.
Yeah.
But it is that whole, well, I'll share with you my problem if you share with me your problem. And then at least we have an understanding of how each other feel, and it gives us that outlet. But I think it's got to the point where people just don't want to feel like burdens. They don't want to appear weak. They don't want to face judgment. I've had it before, again, where I have opened up and it's just backfired on me.
Really?
Yeah, like, you know, I've opened up very kind of minorly to people before. But again, that's probably the reason I don't open up now and talk about anything, because there's been negative reception to it previously, or they've used it against you, or you've opened up and then they've just abandoned you because of it. So then you're like, oh, well, if I tell you how I'm really feeling, or if I show you the kind of real side of me, will you just fucking leave like everyone else has? So I think there's a level of fear there. There's a multitude of reasons, but I think ultimately it's fear of judgment, fear of what could happen in terms of reaction to it. Don't want to look weak and don't want to burden people with how you're feeling. I think that's probably why a lot of people do. Particularly, that's kind of how I see it anyway. But also trust issues as well. There's hundreds of reasons. Like it's different strokes for different folks.
No, 100%. And so, God, yeah. Just gonna get my thoughts together for a minute. Bloody hell. Good. So when you've hit that breaking point, how did you pull yourself out of it? What did you do?
It took me a very long time to. I think I don't want to say I've kind of never really recovered from it, because I definitely have. But I think when you hit that breaking point, you make that decision of like, something's got to give, something's got to change. You've got to do something about it, because you can't feel this way forever. And I think for me, it was, I needed to understand myself better, and I needed to understand my place in this world, and I needed to understand what I wanted to be for people. So then at the very least, I can give myself purpose, if that makes sense. I was like, right, well, if I'm always going to feel like a bit of an outsider, if I'm always going to have an absence of emotion and stuff like that, I need to understand that so I can deal with it. And then I was like, what do I want from life? What do I want to do? You know, and it's a real kind of soul searching moment. But like I said, I enjoy helping people, because it ultimately, in a way, probably makes me feel fulfilled, and it also makes me feel like I'm making a difference. I think the important thing is it makes me feel like I guess I matter in this world, because when you've gone like your whole life being a bit of a when you've gone your whole life being a bit of a recluse and a bit of an outsider, it's really important to just feel like you've got a bit of purpose.
Yeah.
You right? Yeah, I'm good. But yeah, I think it's important. I don't want you realize that your purpose is you don't want people to ever feel the way you felt.
Yeah.
And if that's you feeling a bit lost, a bit broken and stuff like that. I think that's why I ultimately made the decision to try and help people, because you just want to be there on people's worst days, because people weren't there on your worst day, maybe because you didn't reach out and stuff like that. But so I think what got me through breaking point was realizing that I've hit this breaking point. I have this experience. I've been this way. I feel this way. I understand why I feel this way. I can use this knowledge and experience, and I can go out there and I can help people. I can go out there and support those who need supporting, whether it's physically, whether it's mentally, and stuff like that. And also, you try to find hobbies you enjoy. Don't ever apologize for doing the things that you love. You know, as I said, I got bullied relentlessly for the things that I love, but I never stopped doing them. I still do it now, you know. And I think that's the important thing, is just find what you enjoy and do it. Kind of get an idea of your purpose and what you want to do with that, and go from there. But yeah, for me, breaking point, I can't remember a definitive thing of how I pulled myself out of it. I just remember that I needed to change this mindset and almost turn that weakness into a strength. Okay, so I feel like a little bit of an outsider. I feel like a little bit, you know, isolated, but I also have very good experience in dealing with different things. I understand how mental health made me feel. I understand how other things made me feel. I can use this to help people, and, you know, knowing that I don't want people to ever feel the way that I felt, I can help coach and guide them through that, or be there for them, whether it is as a coach or as a friend or just somebody.
Yeah.
So I think that's ultimately what got me through, was it's whatever you're dealing with, understand that you're not dealing with it alone. And if you can, turn that, what you can perceive as a weakness, into a strength, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. And look, thank you for opening up as well, because I know it's hard to talk about.
Yeah, like as I said, I won't go into the deep depths of it, because it's probably, we don't need an hour of crying. But yeah, I think it's important to talk about how you feel, and I think it's something that I'm slowly getting better at. Like, you know, a couple of years ago, I probably would have never have cried on camera.
Yeah,
now you've all seen me tear up, but at the same time, you know, I think it's important for us to understand that the human body will feel emotion, and you need to acknowledge that emotion. You need to acknowledge why you feel that emotion, and you need to feel that emotion. Don't stray away from it. If you're sad, be sad. If you're happy, be happy. If you're angry, just be angry. It's the emotions are there for a reason. And I think the problem is we're worried about how people will judge us for feeling those emotions. Like, you know, I would have, a couple of years ago, looked at somebody crying. I would have cried myself and be like, oh, that's not manly. Whereas I cry at a lot of things now. I don't feel any less masculine than I did before I cried, but it's an emotion. You've got to feel it. And I think if you don't feel those emotions, you'll develop an absence of emotion, which I've developed. And then you're kind of like, oh, crap. So I'm working on that. I'm working on trying to feel the emotions more, understand why you're having them, and feel them. Just feel them, because your body needs to feel and respond to the way it's feeling for whatever reason. Because if you don't let those emotions come through, they'll bottle up inside you, and then it'll all burst out of you when your eggs stick to a pan or when your jumper catches on a door.
Yeah.
So that's my advice to a lot of people, is if you're not going to talk about it, which I recommend you do, if you feel an emotion, recognize it, understand why you're feeling that way for whatever reason, and then just feel that emotion. Doesn't matter if you're going to be angry, doesn't matter if you're going to be sad, doesn't matter if you're going to be happy. If you're going to cry, cry. If you're going to laugh, laugh. Don't bottle any of it up, because the human body's not supposed to. That's why you feel those emotions.
Exactly. And like, so I see this all the time. When someone wants to join our coaching, they always have a call with me, and I essentially on that call, I'm deciding if I'm going to take them on as a client or not. Because there's some people that aren't a good fit for us, and I won't take them on because they're either not ready or they want something that I don't feel comfortable enough helping them with.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I don't just take on everyone. But often when you ask the right question, it elicits an emotional response from someone, which shows they care. But it just always shocks them, like, oh, I don't know why I'm crying. It's like, because you've uncovered a feeling that you didn't quite realise was there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like that conversation alone, like me talking about not wanting people to feel the way that I felt. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like other people don't have a burden of problems and stuff, because they absolutely do. But they may not recognize that. And I think, the more I perhaps spoke about that, the more I would dive into it. And there'd probably be levels to it that, oh shit, even I didn't realize I felt. But I get what you mean. When you get on a coaching call with somebody, you're getting them to put themselves out there as to why they feel that way. And I think that's why I said right at the start of the podcast, we often get people coming to us at their lowest because they're not necessarily at breaking point, but physically or mentally, they just want to feel better, look better, move better. And that's why they come to us. So when we turn around and say, how would it make you feel to achieve this goal and stuff? You're dealing with a lot of complexes and a lot of issues that they've probably built up over time. And you might be the first person they're talking about that. And that's a big release of emotion that they're going to feel. So it is an interesting one. But that's why I love helping people in the work that we do and stuff, because you don't just see the change physically, you see the change mentally, 100%. Be it confidence, happiness, their relationship with other people. You see it all progress and you're like, nice, good job.
100%. Like the people we work as well, because we tend to work with a lot of fat loss clients as well. It's when their relationship with food improves.
Yeah.
That's the biggest one for me.
Massively. Because initially they'll use food as a crutch.
Yep.
And we'll perhaps change that. So they, rather than use food as a crutch, they have other things that they use to help support them and get them through. But they then have something else that they latch onto, which means that their relationship with food, they're eating because they enjoy it, or they're eating because they need to for sustenance. They're not eating because they've had a bad day, so they're just going to go and binge and then set themselves back and stuff like that. Because the other thing is thinking about like your relationship with food and mental health and stuff, just to change it up a little bit more from the pity party of Nick at the moment. But like what happened? I was ill about a month ago. I wasn't ravenously ill, but I remember eating a steak and I was like, oh God, I can't hack this anymore. Oh. And so I've kind of switched my diet to like berries and kind of vegetables and stuff. I still eat meat and I still eat it's a bit more rounded, but like, I think so I needed a lighter diet. I switched to like berries and fruit and yogurts and stuff like that felt a little bit lighter on my stomach. Yeah. And since having a bit more of a varied diet, ironically, since eating my fruit and vegetables, I feel better. Yeah. And I know that's a really bizarre thing for a coach of like nearly 10 years to say, but it is true. And I think, again, when we coach our clients to give them diet and stuff, I'm not telling you to eat your vegetables, drink your water and kind of cut down on the sugars and stuff, because I want you to suffer in a terrible, boring diet. Yeah. It's because your body needs the minerals. It's, the dopamine receptors that will latch onto the fun foods and stuff. It all has an effect on your mental health and your mindset as much as and your energy levels as much as it will have an effect on your performance and how you look as well. Yeah.
And so this is an interesting one. One thing that I am probably a bit more aware of now, mostly because Lucy has noticed it recently, but also when I'm having calls with people, they've also, one or two of them have picked it up as well, is I have a very hyperactive mind. So even on this podcast, I struggle to pay attention. So I'm listening, I'm like, in my head, it's like clapping monkeys. Like sometimes my head is a very weird place. So I'm not going to say this unless I get diagnosed, right? But my mum has ADHD tendencies, and apparently so do I. I don't really believe it, but maybe I do. But I am always very, very hyper and focused. Now, in the past, I would have been like, no, I don't have that, because I would have viewed having that as a weakness. Yeah. If I have it, does it fucking matter? No. I just talk fast and I'm hyper. Maybe because of that. Fun. It just explains something.
Yeah, definitely. They call it neurodiversity for a reason, because it's diverse in the sense that, like, I would like to point out that I personally feel like that everybody is on the spectrum somewhere. Now, there's diversity in that, and that doesn't mean that having dyslexia or ADHD or some type of neurodiversity gives you a weakness. It just means your brain deals with things in a different way. It's the same way as how your brain receives color and how your brain receives sound and things like this. Everybody's brain will receive it in a different way. So even to a level, the way that I would see that shade of red, your brain might see it slightly differently. Yeah. Doesn't mean you're right, doesn't mean I'm wrong. It just means that we perceive things differently. People respond to things differently, react to things differently. We're all wired in the same way, but our brains all work slightly differently. And I think, your potential to have ADHD tendencies and stuff should never be seen as a weakness. It just means your brain deals with things differently. It doesn't mean you're any less of a person. It just means that the way that you need to work and the way that you need to operate is slightly different to other people. I think, again, particularly with the way society has gone and stuff, unless you're kind of straight down the middle and completely normal, it's you're considered weird, or you're considered different, or you're considered weak. Like, I remember in school, like, I mean, even now, like, there were tendencies for myself for like potential like ADHD, and dyslexia and stuff like that. There was all sorts of things. I'm actually getting some tests done through my job to kind of, again, to understand the neurodiversity, to see if there's any particular needs that I have. But I remember being put in a reading club at school because I don't struggle with reading, but I am slow at reading.
Okay.
And it always made me feel stupid. But at the same time, you know, they were putting me in these classes, and then, you know, again, people were like, oh, you're in the idiots club and stuff like that. And I'm like, I'm slow at reading, but I'm also 12 years old, and I'm reading like Lord of the Rings, and I'm reading The Hobbit, like fairly big books. So I grew up with those and everything. Like, you know, it's almost like they try to categorize you in the smart kids and the stupid kids. And it's not, it's just neurodiversity. Like, for you, sitting down doing a desk job 9 to 5 would kill you because your brain deals with things and receives things in a different way. Whereas, you know, you being on coaching calls and you talking to people and you being able to do the job that you do is amazing because you're passionate about it, which shows every time you do it. You're fully capable of doing it, and it's a job role, and and the way that you've structured your kind of career and the business allows your brain to work to its ultimate and optimum function with how it deals with things. Doesn't make you weak at all. It just makes you different, and that's what makes the world interesting, is the quirkiness of people. It'd be very boring if we were all the same.
Yeah, and I mean, I was always the wicked at school. I got bullied loads and da-da-da. So that's kind of why I do it now, because I want to help people feel better about themselves. And also, I'll be honest as well, I have no other qualifications. I went to college, went to a couple of different colleges. I got really bullied once at college, and I had like a little old Nissan Micra. Right? It was a cheap shit car because that's all we could afford. And I loved it. It was great. It never had any issues, and it was great. And then one day I remember I came out and like, just teenagers and just twats, just twatty people. I just fucking hate these lot. And actually, one of these people that did this asked me the other day if I could help him lose fat. And I'm like, nope, you can literally get fucked. Because I still hold on to that resentment for him. But I came out and he had orchestrated with all these other people to put post-it notes all over my car saying, you're a twat, you're worthless, da 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 da. And then after I dropped out of college, I was like, fuck this. So the only thing I could do profession-wise that I could actually do and I could pay for and I could afford to was become a fitness instructor. And then I obviously started going to the gym more, and I decided, at 16, actually, I quite like going to the gym. I quite like feeling good about myself. So then I thought, okay, I'll do my level 3. Now, at the time, back then, a level 3 PT course was about $3,500. I couldn't afford that, but I did an apprenticeship where I got paid I actually got paid okay money. I got paid £7 an hour, which in 2018 was okay. 2018, no, 2016, sorry. God, 2016. 15, 16. That's a long, God, I feel like I'm getting old now.
We are getting old.
Jeez, that's a long time ago. And it was great. I could do my level 3 qualification at Collier's. I could work in the college gym, you know, and it gave me a sense of purpose again. But if I didn't do this, there is nothing else I could do qualification-wise. I couldn't do anything else.
Yeah.
Nothing. So if fitness doesn't work for me, I have no other backup, and that's my driver every day. And I face this pressure every single day that if this doesn't work, I have no backup plan.
Yeah.
So it has to work.
Yeah, it does. But you can see your passion and your drive through what you do. Like, you've mentioned to me, like, particularly starting this business and stuff, even though you've been well integrated into the fitness industry for years, you still feel that sense of imposter syndrome.
Yeah, 100%. I feel it every single, even doing these podcasts, I feel it every single day. And like, when we do this, I'm always like, who the fuck wants to listen to me talk? Who? Obviously some people do, which is great. And I think, you know, that comes from being bullied as a kid and stuff as well. But every single time I take on a client, let's say every client that's ever got a result with me, by the way, has hit a rough patch, okay? All the time. So sometimes I do look at it going like, oh God, can I actually get this person a result? Like, there is this sense of pressure sense of pressure every single day to get this person a result, right? If they don't get a result, they're gonna leave, which it means they're not gonna be helped. They're not gonna be helped. But also, essentially going to slag me off. Now, a negative review goes further than a whatever review, okay? Like, you do something positive, people will maybe say it. You do something bad, and the whole fucking world's going to know, because people tend to latch onto negativity a lot more than positivity.
Yeah.
Which is fun. But even now, like, every single day, like, you know, am I actually good at what I do? Like, this is where Instagram's a bit toxic as well. I'll compare myself to other coach results, going like, oh, they've only just started being an online coach or starting the fitness, and their results are kind of better than mine was at the time. Like, what am I doing? Am I doing something wrong? And it's not doing anything wrong. It just happened. It just happened. And some people, like, let's say with someone who's struggling, then I start to, rather than look into what they're doing, I start to go, what am I doing? So what haven't I done for this person? What can I do more? Which is good to self-reflect. But then I get that fear of, oh my God, am I in the wrong industry? You know, should I have just stayed at the gym and made me feel miserable because it was safe? Like, I get this at least twice a week.
Yeah.
And it crushes me. And every single time it crushes me. And there's always this pressure. And then, like, running the business as well, like, obviously I'm dealing with, like, the only thing that ever causes me stress in life is finances. Anytime. So if I have a particular week where, let's say, we've lost a client or two, you know, I deal with it irrationally. This is where I should get someone else to deal with this as well. Like, I go, oh, well, I'm not a good coach. You know, regardless of how many people I help, I will always think this way. Like, oh, you know, they've left. You know, it's not healthy.
No, it's not. And I think, like you've said, you need to recognise all the people you've helped.
Yeah.
You know, there's always going to be those levels of negativity, and there'll always be those levels of self-doubt, and that's not a bad thing, because you're a very driven and very strong person. Like, there's a reason that when you looked for coaches and when you said you were hiring for coaches, that I leapt at the opportunity to work with you, is because even on the gym floor, you were always the person that kind of inspired me based on how good you were and you know your shit. So I understand what you mean, though, but it's, you know, I think it's safe to have a 24-hour pity party. I think, again, going back to the whole, you need to feel those emotions. If you're sad, feel it. But then you do need to get back on that horse again. But I think for you, you know, look at all the people you've helped. Look at the photo shoot that we recently did and everything. And, you know, ultimately, if you were a shit coach, you wouldn't have people coming to you.
No.
You wouldn't have people singing your praise, and you wouldn't have people staying with you. But also, the big thing is, you're not just a good coach, you're a good person. And I think that's probably something that not a lot of the coaches out there could say. I'm not saying all of them are, but some people are so results driven to the point where they're willing to beat a client into condition to get a transformation, completely disregarding that emotional side of it. But also, yes, you stress about the finances, but you got into the industry to help people. You didn't get into the industry because you saw it as a gold mine that a lot of people do. So you've got integrity, which is more than, again, a lot of coaches would have. So while you're sat there comparing yourself in terms of the transformations or maybe the amount of clients or everything else, you can sit there and go, well, the service that I'm providing and the person that I've become, based on, you know, like you've mentioned, the qualifications and the opportunity you've got, I think you've gone above and beyond what anybody else in your position could have done. And I think you should be very proud of that, because I'm proud of you for it.
It's a hard one, because, so I always mention Lucy. So she's my biggest cheerleader, but also because as a kid I moved around loads, like you as well. I don't really have any childhood friends. Like, the longest I was ever in one place for was in Leatherhead, where I was in there twice, actually, because we moved away to Malvern, because my dad used to move around all the time, so I lived in like Worthing, Newport, Malvern, Slough, which was horrendous. I got bullied really badly there and almost stabbed, which was bad. In a local park late at night, which shouldn't have been at the age of 12, but I was. And there's a reason I was. Well, I don't really want to go into it, so I'm not. One day maybe. And then like Langley, anyway, moved all over the world. Right? Leatherhead was the longest place I was there, from like year 8 to like year 12. So yeah, 4 years, 5 years? I can't do my maths. This is why I'm an online coach as opposed to an accountant. Can't do maths. So where was I going with this?
You're moving around.
Oh yes. So yeah, Lucy's my biggest cheerleader, because I don't have an awful lot of friends. And I am quite a social person to a point, but people also can really piss me off. And also, I find long conversations, I get the clapping monkey syndrome, where I just get bored. And then I just stop listening, which is really bad. And something that Lucy has to go at me about all the time. But I'm not sure if that's just because I lose attention, or if it's just because she's boring me, or if it's just because she's nagging me to usually wash up, which then I just switch off. Anyway, so I don't have an awful lot of friends. So Lucy's my biggest cheerleader, but I'll be honest with you, the most person I talk to the most obviously Lucy, because she lives with me. But if it wasn't for Lucy, I probably would be living on my own, sat in a corner, feeling pretty fucking sad.
Yeah.
But that's fine. I like my own company as well. But it also comes down to, you know, I like to be liked. Now, this is where I like to be liked by all my clients, okay? But on the flip side, I'm having to learn, and I have managed to learn this a lot, especially the last 12 months massively, that people don't come to me to be my friend. They come to me to get results.
Yeah.
So now I've got more of the attitude of, I actually don't care if you like me. I'm going to get you a result. Now, if you're going to lie to me, we're not going to get there. So you need to tell me the truth. And if you don't, I will know and I will call you out on your bullshit.
And what you'll probably find is clients will respect you a lot
Yeah.
more for that, because you've not been so nice to them to the point where you've kind of let them not get results, despite, you know, it's a trade. They give you money in exchange for you giving them results.
Exactly.
And if you're not doing that, then they're going to feel mugged off. So in a way, even though you're like, oh, if I'm mean to them, they won't like me. You're right. You don't need to be liked, but they will like you and respect you for keeping them accountable. Because that's what they've come to you for.
And that's the hardest transition from being a PT to being an online coach, because when you're a PT, you can't really call people out because they will. I would say online coaching clients are way more resilient than PC clients, in my opinion, the ones I've worked with, because there are literally in the gym we used to work at, there's 15 different PTs, right? And we saw experience of this as well. If you pissed them off and you told them they were doing something wrong, rather than try and solve it, they just go to someone else.
Yeah, I also think it comes down to how people deal with confrontation. We're a big society that loves, you know, Instagram and WhatsApp and stuff like that. We're a very kind of technological society, which often means that we deal with one-to-one and face-to-face confrontation.
Yeah.
So you can call somebody out in a message and they'll probably look at it and be like, oh, okay, and receive it better. But if you call someone out in person,
yeah, it's hard.
That is public execution for a lot of people, and they'll feel shamed. And that's when they'll be like, oh, well, fuck them. I'm not going to. So I understand what you mean in the sense that I wouldn't necessarily say online clients are more resilient. I would just say that the way that you're calling them out, because it's in the private sector and it's kind of, you're on a group chat and nobody has to deal with that awkward face-to-face confrontation. Whereas like on the gym floor, if you call them out on the gym floor, they'll be like, well, who heard that?
Yeah.
Who's been looking at me? Who knows?
Yeah.
You know, it's that whole face-to-face confrontation. Like I used to hate face-to-face confrontation, but again, ironically, hearing sirens, I have to deal with that on a daily basis now. But like, I don't enjoy it, but I've had to do it, so I've learned how to do it. But I can see, like, when I confront a client versus when I confront somebody in person, there are very different ways that people take it.
Of course, and like when I say quit, let's just be clear on this, right? I'm not saying you're twat, you're worthless, you're obviously lying to me, even though, you know, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just I'm asking better questions, shall we say? So, okay.
Yeah.
So when I used to be a PT, this used to when I used to be a PT, right? Hey, let's just use. I never had a client called Sandra. We don't have a client called Sandra. I'm just use Sandra because it's the only name I can think of that isn't actually a name of a client I actually do have.
Oh, poor Sandra. She's getting it again.
If I actually ever saw a client called Sandra, which I'm sure we will at some point, we need to find a better name, a different name, not better name. Sandra's a great name, different name. Don't want to offend any Sandras out there. Sorry, Sandra.
Sandra has unsubscribed.
Oh my God, where was I going with that before that rant?
You've got Sandra calling her out.
Oh, yes. Just asking better questions. So, okay. Oh, no, yeah. When I used to do PT clients, that's the one. God, fucking hell. Nathan edited that bit out. Okay, how's your week been? Oh, not very good. You know, okay, why not? Well, I've gained more weight. Okay, great. Here we go. To start the session, right, I was thinking, fucking, here we go again. The same client, and it would be the same client every single week. And I'd be like, do you know what? I just want to gouge my eyes out and fucking not listen to you for an hour. Anyway, I was quite a bit of a dick at PT. Okay, why do you think that is? Oh, I don't know. It's probably because I've had a Big Mac before I come here, I've had a Domino's, and I've measured myself in the evening. I'm like, well, the measure yourself in the evening compared to the morning is why, exactly why. But these two things aren't helpful, right? Well, why have you done that? Well, I had a stressful day. And of course, as a PT, you don't ask the questions of the session because all you need to know is when are you turning up and what time are you turning up, what day, and are you actually going to turn up?
Yeah.
And the amount of times they wouldn't turn up and then they'd be like, oh, you can't charge me. It's like, well, how do I eat? Anyway, whereas as an online coach, okay, we will know before they're checking if they've made results, right? Now, this is the other thing that annoys me as well, is that to me, results isn't just fat loss, okay? It isn't just weight loss, let's say that. Because you can lose fat, in fact, you will when you exercise and eat regularly. You will lose fat and gain muscle, but they both weigh the same. The difference is that we've said many, many times, muscle's more dense, small in appearance, whereas fat spills out more because it's less dense, all right? So, pound of muscle, pound of fat, I almost feel that everywhere. You see a difference, right? But people are so obsessed with the fucking scales. Despite the fact that especially on our software that we use, which is amazing, we can show them their squats like gone up 10 times. We can show them they can do press ups now. We can show them all the things they couldn't do before. It's like, yeah, but it's not, I haven't lost weight. Said, but you look at your photos, and then that is when the ones that don't do photos don't get results, because you can't show them that. So they go, oh, I've not got any results, even though their 5K run is now 25 minutes and it was 40 minutes before. So this really, and this is the problem with the fitness industry, it really does wind me up. Of course, yes, people will lose weight, and all of them will lose weight, okay? And when we are highlighting, okay, we will start with, they've lost this much, but they've also done okay? But I'll never just say they've lost this much and nothing else. I'll always say, but now they can do this, this, and this.
Yeah.
But for some people, they've been able to do this, this, and this, even though it's life-changing, isn't enough, because on the scale, they weigh the same, or they weigh 2 kilos less. Oh, that's a waste of my time. It's like, right, you're never going to get long-term results for this reason, but fun. But, I can't remember where I was going with this.
Calling people out and asking
better questions. Whereas if they're not making results, right, just ask them the question, like, why do you think this is? And then they'll always tell you the answer. It's like, oh, actually, it's because I've done this and this. Okay, why didn't you tell me before? And 9 times out of 10 is because I didn't want to bother you. It's like, you're paying us for a service. Like, I want to be bothered, because it means the more communication we have with the client, the better the result, okay? So I want people to know that when they're struggling, they have to struggle alone. I don't care if they've had a PT in the past that didn't care about them. I don't care if they've been called stupid in the past for struggling. If you've got a question, no question is stupid.
Yeah, and that's where it comes back to feeling like a burden. That's where that mental health card comes in. That's the barrier that you and I do a good job of, because we actively think of breaking down. Is, people don't want to feel judged. They don't want to feel stupid. They don't want to feel like they're burdening us with our problems. That's what we're there for. Yeah. It's not a burden for us. We need to know so we can help you, because we're in the business of helping people. And that's ultimately why people might not give you the answer. That's why they might not, because again, it's because previously they've had a bad experience, or they've been made to feel stupid, or they're worried that we're going to judge them. But we're fairly transparent with our lifestyles and stuff, purely because we want to come across human, because that's what we are. But no, I understand what you mean. The best way we can help people is they open up to us, and we're pretty good at breaking down that barrier. But we just have to sometimes be a bit cruel to be kind, and start calling them out so they can understand that they can tell us about it, because we actually want to know. Yeah. Whereas if you did that in person, that whole public shaming might come in, and that's where you would lose somebody. So I get what you mean.
Exactly. And no one's perfect. I've made a lot of mistakes, especially this year. I've made so many mistakes. And I've made tons of mistakes with clients as well. Like, no one's perfect. And sometimes a client will tell me they're struggling with something, and sometimes I'm panicking because I don't necessarily, at that particular second, know the answers. Only when I've gone away for an hour and thought about it, like, okay, they're telling me this, but I'm looking at data and this isn't quite matching up, then I have to go two things. I have to say, are they doing something they're not telling me about, or have we got the wrong approach for them? Now, 5% of the time, maybe we've got the wrong approach for them, okay? But 95% of the time, if I ask, just before I give you any feedback, is there anything else you need to tell me? Oh, actually, I forgot that I've been having 5 cups of tea a day, but I'm actually having 2 sugars in my tea. I'm like, okay, but you're not logging it. No. Oh, is that bad a difference? It's like, well, yeah, it's quite, in terms of grams, like 2 teaspoons is like 14 grams of sugar. You do that 5 times a day, right? Yeah. That's a lot of sugar.
It is.
And if your body's not using it, it will just turn to fat.
Yeah.
So, then I'm thinking, like, why didn't you tell me this? Because they didn't think about it.
Yeah.
Because in fairness, you wouldn't, would you? If you've always done it all your life, you'd be like, well, I've done it all my life.
Yeah.
But then I always panic. I'm like, oh, why don't I have the answer this second? But sometimes until you've got the full picture, of course you can't give the best course of action without trying to starve them, which we don't do.
Yeah. That's why it's kind of a journey. That's what I explain to clients. And I'm pretty transparent. If I don't know the answer, I'll be like, I don't know. Let me go away and find out for you. Yeah. And we'll learn together. Yeah. It's that human element. It's what, a lot of people would turn around and go, oh, an app would be better, or, oh, this would be better, or I can just Google it. Yeah, but you don't have that human element. Nope. You don't have that emotion. You don't have that person caring, that person who will call you out, but they call you out because they care and they'll listen to you. And, we're willing to go away and learn, and we're willing to go away and improve and adapt to better serve that person, which you wouldn't get from an app.
Nope.
And I think, that's where that important side of it, that human side comes from it. Where in the sense of, right at the start of the podcast, you said we're only human. We are. Yeah. So we are going to make mistakes. Yeah. But we'll always come back and try and rectify those mistakes.
100%. And that is why, like, my whole thing with when I took you on, and when I take any coach on, when I take any member of staff, even, my assistant, bless her, who's really, really good. I won't tell you what she does, but she's really, really good. Probably shouldn't mention her, actually. Is you have to want and I live and breathe this, you have to want the result more than the client does. So when I say this, is, client will say, I want to achieve this and this, but in my head, I'm thinking, well, you want to achieve this, I'm going to get you to here, but when you get there, I'm going to cry. Because this means so much to me. So at the photo shoot, for example, Justina got on video, I'm never going to show the video of it, but I gave a speech about how proud I was of everyone and just burst into tears. I was like, oh, this is a new emotion. Obviously, I cry at films, right? But I was like, I'm not used to crying in front of people and I don't know why I'm crying. So how do I deal with it?
But that's probably one of my favourite moments of working with you, because you cried and I don't think you're any less masculine for crying, but seeing the passion and seeing that emotion and seeing you feel that emotion was brilliant, because A, it made me feel less alone, but B, it showed the clients and me really what you feel and how you feel about this business and what you're achieving. And I think that's ultimately, again, why feeling that emotion is important. That wasn't a moment of weakness. I'd actually argue that was probably the strongest I've ever seen you. And that was, as I said, that's probably my favourite part about a moment of working with you, was because we had this awesome day.
Yeah.
Big old come down. Pizza was awesome.
It was amazing. Yeah,
but
it was amazing.
just seeing you in that moment, I was like, yeah, this is why he's ultimately the best coach I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And that's why I want to work with him.
Yeah. So let's end this on a high. Let's summarise. Okay, so if someone's struggling with their mental health, okay, in your experience, in your opinion, what is the best course of action to go down?
Talk about it, whether it's to friends, family, or counsel, whatever, talk about it. And I'm not saying you need to talk about it because you need to talk about it. I'm saying you need to understand where it comes from and why you're feeling that way. And you need to understand what it is. And I think once you do, find ways of, try and find a meaning behind it, try and find what you want from life and focus on that. My other advice, which I don't think, there's two other bits of advice. We will always idolize somebody, idolize something positive. So if you're a guy, idolize non-toxic masculinity icons. I'm afraid to say it, there's not many of them out there. I idolize Aragorn from Lord of the Rings. Very nerdy, but it is what it is. So if you're going to idolize something, make sure it is the most positive thing that you want from life and idolize that. But also think about your emotions. If you're feeling it, why are you feeling it? What's caused you to feel it? And in that moment, take that time to feel that emotion. If you're going to cry, cry. If you're going to get angry, get angry. If you're going to laugh, laugh. Acknowledge those emotions and let them out, because your body cannot store them up anymore. There is no shame, there is no judgment, and there's no weakness in you feeling those emotions. The human body is supposed to feel them, so feel them. And when you do, you'll feel a whole lot better, trust me. I don't feel any less about Clayton for crying the other day. He doesn't feel any less about me for crying on this podcast. And we're two guys. Guys shouldn't cry. Yeah, they fucking should. And I think, male, female, regardless of what gender you identify as, speak up about how you're feeling. If you have idols and if you look at idolization and stuff like that, make sure it is a positive idol, and also feel those emotions. And that's my advice for you. I'm not saying it's the best advice out there. There are proper mental health specialists which you could always speak to. But in my experience and through my journey, that is ultimately how I've learned to cope, deal, and move past how I used to feel to the person I am now.
100%. 100%. Wow, that was yeah.
You made me cry on our last podcast.
Great, isn't it? Great.
Oh, it's been good. So that's season 1 done. Season 2, I'll be back. Probably the same.
Absolutely, but potentially, definitely a new location.
Yeah, new location. Yeah, Clayton is moving to the coast.
Woohoo! From a flat to a house. Finally, it's been 6 years in the making.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing. So look, thank you for watching episode 7 of the Lean Life podcast. We've got one more episode, which Nick won't be on, unfortunately. It'll be with Laura going through her journey of us, which is going to be amazing. Nick will be back for season 2, which will come out either December 24 or January 25. So you've got a bit of a wait. But in the meantime, make sure to drop us a follow on Instagram, click subscribe on YouTube for more clips of other cool stuff. And look, if you are struggling and you've been inspired by this podcast, reach out to us. We're human. We'll answer any questions and we'll talk to you. Okay. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and thank you for listening and watching us.
It's been a pleasure, folks. See you in season 2.